maybe you're sitting thinking to yourself, how do I draw a bird? So maybe they look like this, kind of a bird-shaped blob with stick legs, or this masterpiece, or, you know, I'm not really sure what that is. And my absolute favorite, this was definitely, this was mine, yeah. So here's some of the stuff that I do. Keep watching for some tips on how to do that. And yeah, I'm not really in the mood to draw hair, so the scribbly disfigured blob is kind of all you get. So go ahead and grab your pencil and paper, and let's get started. Also, if you don't mind, like the video, because for every like that I get, I'm going to draw another hand, because everyone knows I need the practice. This is the bird that I'm going to be using as a reference, but you can just follow along with any picture if you want. Welcome back to the voiceover. So I'm going to be narrating what I did like an hour ago. So first off, what I'm doing is drawing what I like to call a line of action. So it's kind of just the position that the bird is standing in. What I'm doing now is kind of eyeballing the proportions of the bird. So the head size versus the body size. I end up adjusting this later. So I sped this part up, but I'm just making small adjustments to make sure that the structure of the drawing itself is close to the reference. So now you can see me putting a dot in the middle of the head and extending a line out from that. So what that's doing is showing you where the beak is. So the dot in the center kind of shows you where, on a lot of songbirds, that's kind of where the eye is, but we'll get to that later. And it's just showing you kind of where the beak is going. So now I'm just smoothing out the neck area, so between the head and the body circle, I'm just putting little lines so that it blends a little nicer. Use your reference for this part, because it's tricky to tell which, like, some birds have really small necks, some birds have, their necks are bigger than their heads. So here I'm starting on the legs. I just made a little circle for a thigh, and kind of outlining the leg bones, and going out to the ground. So when you draw legs, it's important to remember that a bird's center of balance is kind of in between the middle of their legs, unless they're like hanging or grabbing something. So try and keep their their body weight kind of centered over the middle of their legs. That's why you could see me readjusting it earlier. So what I'm doing right now, I just drew some feet, just some really basic things that I'll elaborate on later. Here I'm just erasing some of the inside details and make it look a little cleaner. So, you've made it this far. Now we get to the fun part, the wings. Hey, look, bones. This is a skeleton. Let's look at the wing. So, you can see it starts up here at the shoulder, and it comes down, and you see this first little kink at an elbow right here. Where's my finger? What was that? This is kind of the equivalent to a human elbow, and you come down here. This is kind of the equivalent of the wrist. So, you can see the radius and ulna right here, and this is called the thumb, I guess. And you come down, and these are the external digits that are fused together. Thanks, Science Me. Now we're back to the art. So you can see I'm drawing the skeletal structure of the wing with the joints kind of here. Funny thing, you actually don't really see the first kink in the bones. That's because there's a tendon that stretches across that, and that's kind of what I'm showing right there. So now you're kind of seeing me draw the leading edge of the wing. Those are where the primary feathers would be, which are the long ones. So now I'm moving away from the wing, and I'm just kind of touching up the tail here, making it a little bit more solid, and kind of moving on to the head. And it's pretty tall on the top how I drew it, so I'm kind of flattening that out a bit to kind of fit the bird better. And now we get to start on the beak. I think beaks are super fun myself, mostly because there's so much variety. Like, they can be long, or they can be short, or they can be curved down, or they can be curved up for some reason. Our bird's beak is pretty short and pretty straight. So I'm going to start doing that. Again, this is just kind of looking at your reference and making sure that it's pretty accurate to that. We're back with the textbook. So first off, a beak is kind of just an extension of a skull. This whole contraption has to, kind of do that. So if we look over here, I want to show you kind of what it looks like on a real bird. So this is a picture of a hawk. Their beak goes back underneath their eye, and you can see it dips back underneath. And then there's a carved out space right here where there are feathers. And then at the top, you can see more beak where their nose is. Okay, so let's do it on your bird. So I'm drawing a little diagram up above to kind of show you what that is in a little bit more detail. So you can see that line in the middle. You can see it kind of bulges on the bottom too. So you can see the little ridge on top, little ridge on bottom, and it goes in the middle. So I'm drawing that right there. You can see that little three-pronged thing going on. Anyway, let's move on. So I drew a nostril here. On some birds, it gets covered up by feathers, but yours might not. So just look at your reference. So now we're going to go ahead and do an eye. I'm erasing the dot in the middle so that it doesn't show up in the eye itself. I'm going to draw a little circle. Again, just look at your reference. So when you're looking at the reference, I think it's kind of important to look for the size and the position of the eye. So, of course, you can see I moved it here. For a lot of songbirds, it's kind of on or a little bit above that center dot that you drew in the beginning. So when you're drawing an eye, as you can see, the circle that I just drew, it'll work. I have another technique. So you draw two different dots, and you draw a line underneath and a line above. So the line on the bottom is going to look kind of like half of an oval, so not quite a circle, and on the top it'll be a little more angular. A lot of times what I like to do is add a little reflection in the eye. So before I actually fill in the eye with the darker color, I'm going to make a small shape in there to kind of make sure I don't draw in that space. And then I'll draw around it, and then you can see a little bit of a reflection, which I think is kind of cute. Now I'm going to be drawing a bottom eyelid, which is just basically just marking out a little space to not draw in. Once you make something dark, it's really hard to make it light again. So if you can just avoid making the area dark in the first place, it makes your life a lot easier. So now I'm going back to the legs to kind of fix these up. So first I'm just drawing the little feathery pants that are kind of going on the bird. So I just ended up trying to fix the legs up here. I didn't like it, so I went back and fixed it later. But right now we're going to work on the feet. So I drew a little thing, and I'm going to go up here on the top left and kind of give you a close-up on how I approach feet. So first I'm going to draw the end of the leg so that you can kind of see where it starts. Then I draw the top of a toe, and on the bottom of the toe, it's kind of like your finger. So if you look at it, there's little bits of skin on the bottom of that. You can see I'm showing it right there because it kind of pinches in at your joints so that you can bend easier. So that's kind of the same thing that happens with birds. So you can see the little bulbs on the bottom, and then it kind of comes up into a toenail. So I'm going to do it again here. It's going to be a little foreshortened, so it's not. It's a little shorter than the toe that you're looking straight on at. And I'm going to do it for the bottom, and there's really only one bubble on the bottom toe, and there's a little bubble in the middle of the foot because there's a fleshy pad in there. And I guess here's a foot that isn't really very well done. So going down to our bird's foot, I'm going to kind of apply this strategy as you can see below. Something that I do here that I just like you to be aware of is I made the middle toe really short. So on the bird in the picture, you can see the middle toe is pretty long, and on the drawing, I kind of neglected to draw that. So just a heads up. So I'm just fixing proportions again. I guess I decided I didn't really like it. So I went ahead and made it a little skinnier on the bottom and a couple other things. Now we're going to start working on the other leg. I'm going to show you a leg technique that I did not do in the first one. So I will show it on the left again. First, I'll draw what I did on the first leg, which was two parallel lines. And on the second leg, I'm showing it's kind of a curved thing in the middle. So this is kind of available to be used in a lot of situations when you're drawing natural things like trees. Especially, you can tell the difference between how much more realistic the second one looks. So when we apply this to bird, what am I doing? I'm drawing roots. Okay, anyway, going back to the bird legs. So first off, I'm just coloring in the legs to make them a little darker. Then I'm working on the foot. And this is where I make the legs actually appear how they kind of do in the picture, and making them a little thinner on the inside. So now I'm going to start doing the external features of the wing. First, what I'm doing is I'm just sectioning the wing out into the 3 different types of feathers that are on there, and I will show you a picture in a second here to highlight which ones are which. So here's this picture. It's got a lot of information, so I highlighted some of the key parts here. The red area, I lumped together the scapulars and mantle. So on our bird, that's actually the white part. This is actually back feathers, not actually part of the wing. In the lime green area, those are all of the coverts that I put together. The next group is the tertials and secondaries, the cyan, and I kind of lump those 2 together. The dark blue, the last section that we have, those are called primaries, and those are the longest flight feathers on the wing. They're towards the outside. Admittedly, I didn't show the sections of the wing very well in my drawing. You can see that there's a little bit of a darkened outline on the sides, but in general, it's just kind of scribbly. So it's a little tricky with black-winged birds because it's really hard to see the different sections, but this is kind of what I just came up with, I guess. I'm basically doing the same thing here for the tail. Again, it's just black, so I kind of just scribbled it in. So I'm starting on the facial feathers with the triangular ear patch that kind of goes underneath and a little bit behind the eye. Mine's kind of a droopy triangle. I'm not really sure what's going on there. But those spots you can see are the darker spot on the reference itself. If you're wondering why I just wrote chunk up there, so am I. Just kidding. So what that means is when you're looking at a bird with a lot of different colors on it, it's the easiest way to draw the different patches of feathers is just by drawing them in large chunks. As I'm drawing the large chunk of black feathers, and then later on I'll draw the large chunks of lighter feathers and large chunks of gray feathers. So right here, I'm drawing a line above the eye because there's a little bit of darker feathers over the eye, as you can see in the reference. Something I'd like to explain really quick. So you can see the circle I just drew is pretty sloppy and not very symmetrical. And what I'm doing on the right is, you can see it's a lot closer to a circular shape. So what I'm doing is, instead of doing it in one smooth motion, and I shouldn't say smooth, but I'm doing it in small scribbly lines, which makes it a lot easier to control what I'm doing. I actually use this technique in a lot of different situations when I'm drawing. So I sped this part up, but right now I'm just darkening the eye area. So for this clip, I am just doing the chunking technique again. You can see I'm sectioning off a little gray, a spot for the gray feathers on top. I just filled those in. Because I use this technique to map different sections of feathers, you can also use this for mapping out shadows. Now before we move on, I'm lastly blending the scribbles together with my finger. It kind of makes it look a little less sketchy and a little more realistic. Okay, so right here I'm touching up the eye a little bit, and then I'm going to work on the beak. So I'm going to put a lot of shading on the bottom, and I'm going to leave a little bit of a highlight kind of on the top of the bottom beak. And then I'm going to shade around the edges on the top beak, and then still leave a little spot for a highlight on top. If you made it this far, thanks so much, and see you in the next video.